Regarding the financial sector, our priority is to have a solid and healthy banking system. We have called upon the European Parliament and the ECOFIN Council to rapidly adopt the legislative proposals on financial supervision to ensure that the European Systemic Risk Board and the three supervisory authorities can begin working from the beginning of next year. Your contribution of the Parliament is vital, and your responsibility is great in this matter. We agreed also that stress tests of the banks will be published at the latest in the second half of July. We asked the Commission to quickly make proposals on naked short selling and credit default swaps. The European Council agreed that Member States should introduce a system of levies and taxes on financial institutions, and we agreed to explore and to develop with our G20 partners the possibility of introducing a global financial transaction tax. Indeed, we agreed a common position on a number of other items that will be dealt with at the G20 Toronto Summit, where Mr. Barroso and myself will have the honour of representing the Union. We also reconfirmed the European Union's position on achieving the Millennium Development Goals, in particular our development aid targets by 2015, despite the economic crisis, and we also reaffirmed our willingness to progress further on climate change. We agreed, subject to certain conditions, to commence the accession negotiations for Iceland to join the European Union and welcomed Estonia's application to join the Eurozone, both a sign of confidence in the future of our Union. We adopted a declaration on Iran, which underlined our deep concerns about its nuclear program and asked the Foreign Affairs Council to adopt at its next meeting measures to implement the UN Security Council sanctions and to accompany them with further measures. In doing so, we proved that the Union can have a common position on one of the most delicate issues in world politics today. The second part of the meeting focused on the issue of economic governance and better coordination of economic policy. I reported back on the work undertaken so far by the task force that the European Council asked me to chair. Already, a high degree of convergence is emerging, and I intend to complete the work of this task force by October at the latest. I will be meeting your delegation both before and after the summer break in order to ensure the Parliament's contribution is fully integrated into our work. The European Council welcomed my progress report and agreed on a first set of orientations. It approved the provisional conclusions on a stricter supervision of the budgets and competitiveness. There is agreement that we need to strengthen both the preventive and the corrective arms of the Stability and Growth Pact. The system of sanctions foreseen in the Pact needs to be reviewed so as to have a coherent and progressive system. There was agreement on the European Commission's idea of European semester, whereby Member States will present their stability and convergence programmes already in the spring of each year, thereby enabling a common review of the underlying assumptions and trends affecting national budgets for the coming years, of course, taking account of national budgetary procedures. On this point, I should emphasise that it was never suggested that finance ministers should have to submit their national budget to the Commission for approval prior to submitting it to their national parliaments. No one would endorse such an infringement of parliamentary competences. The work of the task force is not finished. Other ideas from the Commission, of course, from the Central Bank, from your Parliament and from Member States, from whom we have had nearly a dozen written contributions, are still to be discussed. Some ideas might require treaty change, but as that is a more lengthy and cumbersome procedure, we will give priority to those proposals that can be enacted more speedily and more easily. There anyway seems to be an emerging consensus that we do not need to create new institutions for our economic governance, but to make better use of those that we already have. And while specific decisions will sometimes be necessary at the level of the Eurozone countries, and when required I will convene Eurozone summits as I did already twice, it is at the level of the whole of our Union that the main aspects of our economic governance must be decided. Whether we are in the Eurozone or not, we are economically interdependent and share the common ownership of the world's largest market. That is the level at which the bulk of European decisions must be taken through the institutional structures and procedures of our Union. In this context, in accordance with the Treaty, the European Council intends to fulfil its role of setting political directions and priorities for the Union, including economic strategy and governance. Dear colleagues, the economic challenges facing Europe remain immense. We were very close to the edge of the precipice just a few weeks ago, and we have not yet reached safety. We were right to provide the fiscal stimulus at the depth of the recession, but we must be careful not to reach a situation where fiscal deficits and accumulated level of debt become unsustainable and begin to be themselves a threat to our economic recovery. The measures taken by the Member States to reduce their deficits will not have a profound deflationary effect for the Union as a whole, if they restore confidence in the economy, thereby stimulating both consumption and investment. On the other hand, failure to correct unsustainable deficits would ultimately lead to a fatal loss of credibility and confidence with lasting economic damage. The measures taken are differentiated according to the varied situations of each Member State, and they are gradual. Indeed, rather than the absolute level, it is the direction and its sustainability that are important. Provided we persevere, I have every confidence that Europe will turn the corner. Dear colleagues, I consider this meeting of the European Council to have been a further important step in combating the crisis, which started as a financial crisis and became an economic, budgetary, and nearly a monetary crisis. We are drawing the lessons of all this and correcting the course step by step. I am confident that we will succeed. Thank you.